Welcome to the Fantasy Champions Fantasy Football Podcast. Here's your host, Morgan Colby and Rick Lemon.
Welcome to the Fantasy Champions Fantasy Football Podcast. My name is Morgan Colby. I got Rick Lemon with me as always. What's poppin', Ricardo?
What's up?
And today we are going to bring you our top 5 forgotten players for the 2022 fantasy football season. This is our last episode and last week of 2 episodes per week. Next week, we got bold predictions, top 5 value picks, our mock draft 7.0 to start off the month of August as we approach preseason and the ultimate beginning of the NFL season. So it should be interesting as the next month unfolds. I hope this month is as fast as the other months because I would really like to watch football again.
Me too. It's actually kind of nice that it's already August in that way.
I know, and
not nice that I'm gonna have to start up college again, but
yeah, that's true. But anyway, so we got an interesting show for you, top 5 forgotten players. Let's jump right in. Before we do that, check out our website, fantasychampions.com. Follow us Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, or any other podcast platforms, please leave a review and share this podcast with your friends. If you're watching on YouTube, subscribe, click the bell for notifications, like, and comment down below any questions you might have for us or thoughts that you would have for us on the show.
Yeah.
You ready to get into the top 5 forgotten players?
Let's do it.
All right, so little prerequisite to discuss for the top 5 forgotten players. We're going to try to get this show done relatively quickly. Don't want to keep you guys held up on this show because we only got 5 players for you. But these are guys that had decent seasons last year, that finished well or relatively well last year, that people are driving down draft boards, and the ADP doesn't really align with what they did in the previous year, so they're becoming forgotten, right? So that's essentially what these guys are. I don't want to get caught up in the what is it called, the background of it all, but I think these guys are all guys that had decent years last year and are being forgotten about. Also, we think they're going to probably be good this year. So, anyway, you ready to get started, Rick?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, so number 1 on the list is Ezekiel Elliott. And right now, Zeke's ADP, according to 4for4's website, where they list ADP for many different platforms, has Ezekiel Elliott currently at pick 32, which is RB16. Last year, he finished as the RB6 on the season in PPR formats, and he didn't have that bad of a season. Now, the big thing with Ezekiel Elliott, obviously, is I think there's some concern. We'll start off with the reason why he's probably falling down boards. Is A, concern with age, and B, concern with the fact that Tony Pollard did decently last year, and had some form of a role in the offense next to Ezekiel Elliott. It wasn't like Elliott got hurt and then Pollard came in. Pollard was actually working in unison with Ezekiel Elliott. So I feel like for me, I'm not really concerned about Pollard. Pollard is like a 24-year-old running back who is starting to hit the glory days of the running back position. 26 years old is usually when guys start to fall apart.
Yeah.
I think Zeke is like 27 or 28. But anyway, so a guy like Pollard is not really even that young or a guy that would take over the role. Guys like Tony Pollard and Alexander Mattison are handcuffs. They're high-end handcuffs in fantasy football. So I don't view Tony Pollard as a threat to Ezekiel Elliott. Elliott's contract is too large for them just to start giving work to Tony Pollard. It's just not going to happen. So Elliott is going to get the same amount of work he's always gotten. He's going to get the same role that he had last year. The offense really isn't going to change all that much. And so with that being said, the expectation for me is that Zeke does finish in at least the top 10 in fantasy football this year at the running back position. And if you can get that at RB16 in the third round, I think you're stealing at that point.
Yeah, I agree. I wasn't crazy high on Zeke. I also looked at his points per game, and it was good, not great. It wasn't in the top 10 for running backs, so I do understand why people are a little hesitant. I mean, I was very anti-Zeke. I wasn't drafting him in any leagues. But, I mean, on Underdog, that ADP is really juicy in those best ball leagues at, I think, pick 40?
Yeah, around there.
Going outside like the top 18, 17 running backs.
Yeah.
It's tough to get a guy like Zeke at that spot. And I know he's old, and this could be the year that he falls off. He has had decreased amount of carries each last 4 seasons. But still, that being said, last year he still had 237 carries, still had 10 rushing touchdowns, still had 65 targets. I could also see the Cowboys using the running backs a lot in the passing game. Maybe they want to use Pollard in the slot to start the season a lot. Due to their wide receiver situation, with Cooper gone and Michael Gallup potentially missing the beginning of the year. If they don't trust Jalen Tolbert, that's gonna be a pretty weak wide receiver room outside of CeeDee Lamb. So the running backs will probably get very much involved in the passing game still.
Yeah.
Which is still why Zeke I think will be good. And I agree with you. I don't think Tony Pollard, I do think Zeke's getting kind of old, but I'm not really scared of Tony Pollard all of a sudden getting 200 plus carries. Tony Pollard is what he is, which is a fine player. But I don't think he's someone who's going to just take over the role for Zeke. And what he did last year, I think is probably
he's 24. He's 25. By the end of the season, he'll be 26.
Yeah. It's he's not young by any means. This is who he is.
Yeah.
And again, not a bad player at all. It's a very good complimentary running back. And change of pace kind of guy. And he had 130 carries last year. I don't really see him getting really more than that. So what Zeke is I think this past year is kind of what he's going to do this year, which is still pretty good. And a points per game basis, it's not top 7, but it's still very good and worth where he's going. He's definitely dropping because a lot of people are scared about him, but they shouldn't be.
Yeah, and I think when you look at, I'm trying to find his fantasy points per opportunity, it's 0.83. And last year he had 237 rush attempts.
It's not bad.
47 catches. So if you put it in that conversation, he's going to be a guy in PPR and half PPR formats that puts up, anywhere between 220 to 240 fantasy points, which is a good season. And if you can get that in the third round as the RB16 with the ceiling that Zeke has, if he's playing well, that's really good. I think there should be tempered expectations with Zeke, though. I think you shouldn't be like, oh my god,
yeah, he's not a top 5 running
he's going to be a
anymore.
top 5 running back this year. I stole Ezekiel Elliott. He's not that anymore. And I think he could be top 10. He'll probably be, somewhere between 7 and 10, but I don't see that. But if you can get him at 16, I mean, that's perfect. So let's talk about number 2, Antonio Gibson, who, and on a points per game basis, people have talked about how he hasn't really cracked the top 15 in fantasy football over the first 2 years of his career now. But in 2021, he was RB12. In 2020, he was also RB12. So he was able to get into the top 12 in fantasy football. I don't know if his ceiling can go any higher than that, but there have been a lot of people concerned about Brian Robinson coming in, the running back from Alabama, getting drafted by the Washington Commanders, and him coming in and stealing some of the work that Antonio Gibson had. And I just don't think that there is room, despite some of the rumors surrounding the Commanders and how they want to use Brian Robinson. I don't think there's enough room with McKissick, Brian Robinson, and Antonio Gibson for Brian Robinson to carve out a role on the team. I just don't think it's there. Gibson's going to have his role, and then J.D. McKissick is going to have his role, and then Brian Robinson will come in to spell either one of them. So I don't think that he's going to have a big effect on Antonio Gibson, but right now, Like I said, last year finishes the RB12. Right now he is the RB20. So he's going 8 spots lower, not 8 spots lower, but he's going 8 running back positions lower than he finished last year. And people are starting to fade out on Gibson. In some formats, Underdog has him at 73 right now.
Got him in the 8th, 7th round before an Underdog.
And in regular drafts, he's round 47. ESPN 50, Fantasy Football Calculator has him at 58. NFL.com has him right now at 22, but they're ADP. That's
NFL.com. That's the only reason his ADP is that high, because of NFL.com. So but every other platform is
like what is probably going to be RB24 when it's all said and done. And with that being said, like I think that is like
good value.
Zeke's was like 6 or 7 spots different. That's 12 to 13 spots, maybe 14 spots different. That's really great value, and I think a lot of people are forgetting about the upside that he does carry. Like you talk about Zeke. Zeke has upside, but like he's kind of capped at this point in his career. Where Gibson, like he's in his 3rd year. Like this could be the year where they just give him everything and he ends up breaking out and becoming, you know, the running back that we all anticipated. Like I think there is still that opportunity, or that outcome is still within the realm of possibility for Antonio Gibson. We just got to see them give him the workload and give him the opportunities to do it.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. It's unbelievable on Underdog, really. I'm picking him at his ADP, which is 72 right now. It's just ridiculous.
Well, I mean, because you're afraid of a rookie running back drafted in like the 5th round.
What is it?
It's all because of a stupid running back that they drafted in the 5th round. I'm like, come on, people.
I know, and it's like it's Ron Rivera. I know he says
he wants to do something.
He wants to use all the running backs. Has he ever used all the running backs in this offense?
No, not in this offense and not in Carolina.
I mean, maybe a little bit with McKissick, but nothing that like Gibson was still getting like 200 plus touches.
Yeah. He's a 3rd round
pick. And guess what? I think Gibson's going to get 200 plus touches again. Is the Washington offense great? No. Is J.D. McKissick going to get used in the passing game? Sure. Yeah. Does that mean you should draft Antonio Gibson at 72? Yeah, you should. You should draft him higher too.
Yeah.
Where he's getting drafted behind A.J. Dillon, who I like A.J. Dillon. I've said before, like, if I'm going to draft a team's running back too, it's probably going to be A.J. Dillon because of what he does on the ground.
Yeah.
I'm not drafting A.J. Dillon over Antonio Gibson. I'm just not doing it. I don't care if Gibson does I mean, he could literally have 0 improvement on the last 2 seasons, and you're still getting a major value there.
Right. And he had, last year, he had 310 total touches.
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of insane
300
to think about
total touches. That low. He had 52 targets. But his weighted opportunity share was number 8 in the NFL. So he was getting opportunity. And and I just don't think that opportunity is going to change. So that's kind of where it is for me. And then you look at in 2020, you know, he had 0.94 fantasy points per opportunity. In 2021, that changed to 0.74. So the offense was less efficient last year because, you know, they didn't have a quarterback. Their offense was horrid.
Their offense
was bad. And so, you know, you see that, and it's like, obviously Gibson is going to lose out in certain categories because the offense blows. But now you have Carson Wentz, who I think is an upgrade on any quarterback that they've had. And I think their offense might be slightly better with Carson Wentz. So if that's the case, I think his opportunity, you know, per fantasy point per opportunity total will go up. And if he gets this workload, like, he's going to be a top 12 running back again, maybe higher. So I just don't see why people are like fading the guy.
Mm-hmm.
But he's definitely forgotten about at this point. He's becoming a guy that's falling down draft boards that people don't want to touch.
Right.
Number 3, real gross, Kirk Cousins.
Might be the grossest one on this
list.
This
might be the grossest one, but I actually was looking at this, and I almost said Derek Carr. And, you know, Rick has put Derek Carr on, I can't remember what show you put him on, QB Sleepers?
Yeah.
And just because he has a much better offense. He's always been like QB 12, QB 13, QB 14, but he's been in that conversation where he could be considered a quarterback in the, the top 10 in some weeks. But now he has, Devontae Adams. He has a good offense. He has Josh McDaniels at the
easily
helm.
the best offense he's ever had.
Yeah, easily the best offense he's ever had. And he's going to get some opportunity. But we're not here to talk about Derek Carr. Okay, Derek Carr is also a good forgotten player, but I think Kirk Cousins is better. Kirk Cousins right now was the last year. Right now he's going off the board as the QB 15. I'm confusing myself. But last year he went off. This year he went off the board as the QB 15. Last year he finished as the quarterback 11. If we look at previous seasons, in 2020, Kirk Cousins was the quarterback 11. In 2019, Kirk Cousins was the quarterback 18. So he wasn't great then. 2018, I'll just go back 4 years. Kirk Cousins was the quarterback 13. So he's always like right around 11, 12, or 13.
I know you said you'd only get back a couple of years, but if you include 17, 16, he was QB 6 and 5.
Yeah. So the big thing about this offense is that Dalvin Cook is there. They've been a run-heavy scheme. You saw like Kevin Stefanski was the offensive coordinator. He went to play with the Cleveland Browns, running a very similar system to what the Minnesota Vikings were. And so that is a system. You're changing that system now from what Kevin Stefanski or who was the old head coach, Mike? Can't remember his name. Anyway, you're changing that system from, a run first attack that runs mostly out of play action to the Los Angeles Rams, who also run a lot of running plays, but do a lot of play action as well, and they pass the ball a lot. And we saw what Cooper Kupp was able to do in that offense. We saw what Matt Stafford was able to do in an offense like that. And if that offense carries over with the new coaching staff, I think you're going to see a guy like Kirk Cousins maybe finish higher than that QB 11 value, where he could be QB 7, QB 8, and give you winnable weeks in fantasy football and be a decent quarterback. Rick always uses this strategy where he takes a young Justin Fields, maybe Trey Lance, maybe Zach Wilson, probably not Zach Wilson, but or
Trevor Lawrence.
Or Trevor Lawrence. I was just about to bring us in. He'll do that, draft a young quarterback, maybe in the second or third year that has upside, and then draft a Kirk Cousins, who is a gross pick, but is going to give you probably at least 18 points in the week one. You know what I mean? So it's like, I think Kirk Cousins' value is good here based on where he's going. Obviously, I think, it's not a massive separation between QB 11 and QB 14 or 15, but I think at the quarterback position, if you can get him in the, in the 11th, 12th, 13th round, I think you're getting a weekly starting quarterback at a good value.
Yeah, I've always been anti-Cousins, but
he just puts
it's hard to argue. It's really hard to argue against it. He's been really consistent. I actually projected the Vikings out recently, and I have another good year for Kirk Cousins. Probably a top, 12 quarterback again, 12, 13 quarterback. And he's going, QB 15, QB 16. So it's not a huge difference, but you're getting a guy who's going to be a starting quarterback week in and week out for your fantasy team. And you can really wait on him. And to be honest, his points per game last year was not really different at all to Dak Prescott, Matt Stafford, and Joe Burrow. And you're getting him like 4 to 5 rounds after those guys. So Kirk Cousins is actually a pretty good player that is getting forgotten about. And you're right about that scheme. That Rams scheme is exciting. He's still got 2 great wide receivers. Dalvin Cook, Irv Smith is coming back, the tight end. So he's got a lot of weapons there and should be a good player.
Yeah. Totes agree. Fourth guy is a little bit more exciting than Kirk Cousins. It's Deontay Johnson. I have been back and forth on Deontay Johnson all offseason, and now when the crunch time starts happening, I'm back on Deontay Johnson. I do like him this year.
There we go.
All over the road. But right now he's going off the board as the wide receiver 16. Obviously, we know at the wide receiver position in PPR last year, he was wide receiver 10.
Wide receiver 8. I think you're looking at half PPR.
I'm sorry. I'm looking at freaking straight standard. It's because it reloaded. The page reloaded. I was looking at PPR and then it reloaded. wide receiver 8 last year. He's going off the board as wide receiver 16. We know how good Deontay Johnson is as a player. Great. He plays a lot of slot. He's a great slot receiver, steady hands, great player overall, and he can produce in fantasy football. The question is not his upside and his ability. It's what the expectation is for the Steelers offense and the Steelers in general. You obviously lose Big Ben, who have driven that ship for a while, and when Big Ben is not there, typically the Steelers suck. So, when Mason Rudolph was the quarterback, they sucked. When who was the other guy that had? Did they have Tyrod Taylor or was it Deshaun Kaiser?
Oh my gosh, I think it was Kaiser.
But
that didn't last long.
I know, but the quarterback position without Big Ben has been a disaster. This team typically does really well with drafting, and they drafted Kenny Pickett with the 20th pick. Is that correct? 21st pick in the NFL draft.
Yeah. 21st, I think.
With him coming into the NFL, I don't know if he's going to start. You also have Trubisky coming in. But the question is, are you on the side of Trubisky or Kenny Pickett is better than anything Big Ben did last year? Or are you on the side of Big Ben, even though his statistics and the deep analytics weren't great, he still knew how to drive that offense to a place where it was at least decent enough to win football games, which led to Deontay Johnson having good games. Which side are you on? And I would say that we know Big Ben blows at this point in his career, or at least at that point in his career because he's retired. And then you look at it on the flip side, and you have these new quarterbacks coming in who actually are relatively good. Like Trubisky's not a great quarterback. I hope he loses the job, and I hope we get to see Pickett. But I think either way, what'd you say?
I said, wow.
Yeah, sorry.
Hope he loses the job.
Sorry, Mitch. I mean, I'd love to see if he actually has it. Like Mitch.
I personally would rather see Trubisky because I have no shares of Kenny Pickett. So
get out of here. You have a share of Trubisky?
No. Actually, I do.
Oh, no.
But not intentionally.
Yeah. But either way. So for, in that context, though, I think, like, if, you could talk about semantics too, like Trubisky's more of a risk taker, whereas, Pickett's going to be a rookie. And I think, he'll go with the safer option, which would be Deontay Johnson or Najee Harris. Whereas I think that a guy like Trubisky will take shots down the field, which might be Pat Freiermuth in the middle or, Chase Claypool on the outside. So, but this offense is not bad. They did make, improvements on the offensive line too. So it's like, there's some good things to be talked about. And I think that when you look at either one of these quarterbacks coming in, they're obviously clearly above and beyond better than Mason Rudolph. So, I think you're going to either get even with Big Ben production or better. And because of that, I don't know why we don't look at Deontay Johnson as a player who's in the same position as he was last year. I don't know how we can't.
Yeah, it's why I've been pro Deontay most of the year. And I'm not even saying he's going to be great. Like, I've been kind of iffy about putting him in my top 12 wide receivers. But going as the wide receiver 16, like, I draft him a lot at that value.
Right.
Because of the situation that he's in and what he was in last year, as you were saying. Roethlisberger wasn't good. He had the team. Roethlisberger only had 22 touchdowns. I guess Mason Rudolph threw one, so they had 23 on the season. Roethlisberger had 3,700 yards. The team had 4,000. Those aren't like insane stats. Deontay Johnson, all he needs to do is have a similar season to what he did last year. He does not need to be wide receiver 8 for you to have a good draft pick there.
Yeah.
If he's wide receiver 12, that's going to be a really solid pick there at pick 40, and I think on Underdog even lower.
Underdog, he's at 43.
43. Yeah, I mean, so in that range though. All he's got to do is finish it, like I said, that wide receiver 10 to 12 range, and that's going to be a home run.
Now, I'll ask you a question, though. DJ Moore or Deontay Johnson?
Oh. I don't know. I'm a DJ Moore guy.
I know. It's even.
it is kind of even.
Very close. But DJ Moore.
I think probably Deontay, though.
DJ Moore going 12
No,
spots
I don't know.
Is going 12 spots ahead of Deontay Johnson.
On underdog, but he's going 12 spots lower on sleeper.
Mike Williams is 29th. Oh God, on underdog. But no, I agree with you, Rick. I think, there are very much concerns with Deontay Johnson, but I think you can kind of look past them. It just took me all offseason to get there. I love Kenny Pickett. I think he's going to be a great quarterback in the NFL. I think that it depends on if he's in the starting role or not. I think that might affect how much opportunity Deontay gets if that happens. Like you start the season with Trubisky, maybe Trubisky plays himself out of a job in 3 weeks, but we'll see what happens with that. Let's talk. Any more thoughts on Deontay?
No. That's
right, let's talk about the last guy, which is Christian Kirk. Now this one is back to Grosstown, but if we want to talk about Christian Kirk in PPR leagues, Christian Kirk was wide receiver 23, so he was a low end wide receiver 2 on the ADP on the 4for4 website. Currently, he is wide receiver 43 at pick 104, which is basically a 9th round selection. He changed teams, so that's obviously one big change. He went to a very not great team in Jacksonville with a should be really great quarterback in Trevor Lawrence.
That's so.
He's pick 82 on underdog, so that shows you where people who are investing money into this are putting him basically 22 spots higher. If he holds at that 104, he's a great value because you're basically getting 20 positional slots higher. The question is, what does Jacksonville do with Christian Kirk? They spent a large sum of money on Christian Kirk. So the anticipation would be that Kirk is going to be the wide receiver 1, obviously, and Trevor Lawrence is probably going to throw it to him a lot.
Yeah.
Who else is there at the wide receiver position?
That's the thing. They gave him this massive contract. Mm-hmm. So they clearly view him as the guy in the offense. So he's going to get the opportunity.
Either that or it's
Marvin Jones, Laviska Shenault, who they've buried, and Zay Jones, who they gave $30 million on a 3-year deal, who is not a good wide receiver. And then Travis Etienne out of the backfield. So it's really going to be Kirk. So you're looking at probably 100. This is on a light note. I projected him at 117 targets. I think he could very easily get more, but let's just say 117. I have him as my wide receiver. I think he's in my top 23. So where he finished last year, which is 20 spots higher than what he's getting drafted as.
Wow.
So it's quite the value there. I don't think he's necessarily going to finish at that spot, right. But still, Kirk is a very, very solid player, and people just don't like him because they either don't like the player or they hate the Jaguars, which is very fair. I understand, but this game is all about opportunity, and you get opportunity like he is getting with Trevor Lawrence as your quarterback, who that's where it really comes down to, because if you expect Trevor Lawrence to just suck again, then Kirk will suck. Like he's not going to do good even with the targets. But if you, like me, think Trevor Lawrence is going to be a good NFL quarterback, then Christian Kirk should have a good season this year.
So but it is I just did the math. He had fantasy point per target of 2, that's what I look for in wide receivers. If you're at 2 or slightly lower, you're good. Some of the best, like I'll pull up Jamar Chase's real fast because he was absolutely insane with his opportunity. He was at a fantasy point per target of 2.38. So Christian Kirk last year was 2.02, which is very, very, very good. If he gets 120 targets and he's as efficient as he's been in the past, then he gets 240 fantasy points next year, which in PPR at the wide receiver position would put him at wide receiver 9, 10, 11, 12.
There's no way that's happening.
There's no way that happens, but he'll probably regress in the fantasy point per target situation because of that situation. But like, there's no reason why you can't think that with the extra opportunity that he's getting, he doesn't finish as wide receiver 18 or 19, right?
Yeah.
So if that does happen, he's a mid-range wide receiver 2 in 12-team leagues, and you got him at what, wide receiver 43?
Right. Exactly.
That's
ridiculous. I mean, what other wide receiver 1 is there at that ADP, like wide receiver 1 on their team?
Yep.
Maybe Robert Woods.
Yep.
Probably.
So I just
maybe
sold
Alan
myself on
Lazard.
Christian Kirk for 5 minutes. I don't like that at all. I'm gonna pull up the reception perception chart because
It's probably not great.
We'll see because I've been shocked before.
I never have been a huge fan of Christian Kirk, the player.
I mean, he's a good player. He's like NFL wise, he's just never been like a great fantasy asset. There was like one season where I was in on him, and then that was it. His reception perception chart.
I always thought he was a good like number 2 and number 3. I never thought he was like a wide receiver 1, but
he's okay. 23rd percentile versus man, which is not good. Zone 64th percentile. Press 45th percentile.
Seems very average.
Yeah, his chart is actually not bad. Most of his route tree he does good work with. He's good with curls, digs, screen passes, flats, comeback routes, out routes, and corner routes. He struggles on 9 routes, which is straight down the field, post routes, and then slants, which are kind of the 3 most used routes in football. Christian Kirk probably should.
It's not great.
But we'll see how he's utilized. I don't think he's a bad player. I think he's a okay player. Or he's probably a good player, but he's not like he's not going to blow you out of the water. Like the numbers I was just saying with the 2 fantasy point per opportunity, 2 fantasy point per target share. That number is probably going to drop because the offense isn't going to be as efficient. But
right.
When you look at
not compared to the Cardinals,
like over under, well, I'm just going to go off last year's numbers. Over under 5 touchdowns.
Close because the offense is going to suck, but I'll say over.
Over under 77 receptions.
Also close because I think the offense is going to suck, but
probably the over.
I'll say over, and I'm not going to say the offense is going to suck, but it's not going to be like Arizona offense.
Right, exactly. And then over under 982 receiving yards.
Probably slightly over that. Yeah.
So him leaving is a good thing. So my expectation is probably wide receiver 20 or 19, but like I said, going off the board,
that's insanely high expectations considering where he's going.
Yeah, right. So good value there for Christian Kirk. But they're your top 5 forgotten players for the 2022 fantasy football season. We have Ezekiel Elliott, Antonio Gibson, Kirk Cousins, Deontay Johnson, Christian Kirk. This is our final week of 2 episodes a week. Next week we go to 3, so be sure to check out that. Leave a comment on the video, like, subscribe, do all that good stuff. We'll talk to you later, guys.
Later.
Thank you for listening to the Fantasy Champions Podcast. Make sure you subscribe on iTunes and YouTube, and follow us on Twitter @TheFFChamps.